Hello and welcome to this series of interviews that we are doing between key relationships, policymakers, experts that bridge the developing relationship of between India and Australia, one of the most critical relationships in the Indo-Pacific. Today, we're really, really happy that we have with us Molina Asthana, who is a lawyer, a community leader, and advocate for diversity and inclusion. She is the first South Asian woman to be elected president of the Law Institute of Victoria, which is the
President
peak
elect.
as an elect, which is, my apologies, it is the peak body that governs the legal profession in Victoria. She is the president of the International Law Association, Victorian chapter, national president of the Asian Australian Lawyers Association, co founder of the Asian Australian Alliance, and was the chair of the Women in Business chapter of the Australia India Business Council. She was also the principal solicitor with the Victorian Government Solicitor's Office. Molina, in addition to all this work that she has done, has also served on various other boards, including AMES Australia, Good Shepherd Australia, New Zealand, Graduate House of the University of Melbourne, and Table Tennis Victoria. Molina is also the founder of the organization Multicultural Women in Sports, which aims to empower women with multicultural backgrounds through sports. She is a commissioner for the AFL Southeast Commission and was on the AFL Advisory Committee for Multicultural Engagement. She has been a Cricket Australia ambassador, the Commonwealth Games 2018 ambassador, as well as the Jean Hales Women's Health Ambassador, and was also a champion for the ICC T20 Men's World Cup. She has received numerous awards, including the Victorian Multicultural Award for Excellence for 2014 and 16, and was a finalist for the Law Institute of Victoria Access to Justice Award in 2016. Wow, Molina, that really is a stunning bio. Welcome to the series of interviews that we are doing. It is such a privilege to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me. And that was a little embarrassing to be hearing all about yourself. I'd rather be talking about interesting things and what people are doing. So,
That's very modest of you, but it's amazing the amount of work that you have packed in. Your daily schedule must be very, very busy.
yes, it can get busy sometimes, but I love what I do. So it doesn't feel like a chore.
So let me begin by asking you. Let us get to know you a little bit more. You moved from India to Australia. What was that journey like?
Yes, I moved about 18 years ago. I did my Master's of Law at Melbourne University. Have been practicing since then, though it wasn't an easy journey for me to do that because my background and my qualifications were discounted by most of the recruiters, and they said that I wouldn't get a job in my profession. I was already legally qualified in India. I was practicing before I moved there. But anyway, I was very persistent. I found opportunities to talk directly to partners of big firms, and I finally landed with my first job was with a top tier firm. I worked with a couple of top tier firms, and then with the Victorian Government Solicitor's Office for nearly 11 years. And then I started my own practice about 4 years ago because I was getting very involved in community work, and definitely that's my passion: diversity and inclusion through various ways. So that's why I decided that I don't want to do a full-time job. I'd rather practice, which gives me some flexibility to focus on areas that I'm really passionate about. And that's what I'm doing now. So it's been a long journey, but a lot of learnings on the way. But I'm hoping to give back now to community.
You know, your community work is incredible, and going to come to that. But before that, tell me, you must have faced some major differences between the legal systems in India and Australia. Would I be correct in saying that?
Yes, so we do have a common base, which is the common law. So the British, obviously, it's the British common law that India follows, and so does Australia. So there is similarity in some of the laws, the hierarchy and how the courts are structured and things, and the civil procedure code, the criminal procedure code, sort of originated from the British system. So there's similarities, because of which it was slightly easier for me to be able to practice here. But there is also differences. There's obviously it's the way you practice is what is different. So in India, when I started out practice, and my whole family is from the legal profession of judges and lawyers, so it was always small litigation practices, and litigation was pretty predominantly, I think it was constituted about 80% of the work in India in law. Commercial law only came much later and became prominent much later, and now. Um, Whereas Australia was the structure, it's a lot of big firms, and big firms have people like 500 in one city and 500 in another city, and multiple offices across the country and overseas. It's a very different culture, and it's not litigation. Litigation is really expensive, so people don't litigate that often. So that's why there's a lot of alternative dispute resolution or settlement that happens outside of court, and there's also a lot of focus on commercial work. So that's sort of kind of the way it's less litigation focused, more commercial focused, and alternative dispute resolution focused. But also in terms of, like, if you look at courts in India, if you go to a court, it is fascinating to watch how many cases they dispose of in a day. And there's a huge number of people sort of just milling around court, hanging around, and there's a lot of lawyers, they say that they waste a lot of time just waiting for their matters to come up, but that's how it is. It's just but the courts are still, I would still say, in the number of cases that are in pending in India, there's still quite a bit of, the judges are amazing. They really get to the point very quickly, but it takes a long time for the matters to reach there. Whereas here, there's very few cases. You won't see like a court with cases, 10, even more than 5, 10 cases in a day. So that's also like quite a lot. Sometimes it just be one case, two cases. You go up to the high court, they don't even sit every day. So it's kind of, the pendency is of court, and the court sort of how the courts function is quite different as well. So I guess there's differences, some similarities, as I said, in law, but the practice of it is quite different here.
So the environment is different. So when you, how did the legal community, when you became the first Southeast Asian woman to be the president of the Law Institute of Victoria, how did the legal community respond to this?
So the president-elect is the right term. So, but
President.
yes, so I think the community was, it's the whole Asian community, because I also lead another organization called the Asian Australian Lawyers Association that you mentioned. So that one, I have a lot of support from diverse communities for my appointment, and they have always backed me. But I also try and represent the interests here, because predominantly the legal system here is Anglo white. It was also male dominated. More recently, there is more women now in the profession, practicing at all levels. Still at the top level, there's still less women and very few people of color. So that's been a lot of my work in trying to see more diversity and inclusion in court, to see more appointments of judges from diverse background and Asian backgrounds, seeing more partners of big firms to be from those backgrounds as well, and also providing support to our junior members of the profession who really struggle. For example, when I joined, there wasn't any organization like ours, the Asian Australian Lawyers Association. So I really struggled to fit in. I always felt like an outsider who didn't grow up with didn't go to the same schools, didn't grow up watching the same TV shows, don't watch the same football, that is Australian rules football. I sit on the commission now, but I didn't know much about that sport when I came to the country. So all that learning happened, and I feel because of the work that I've been doing to make people of diverse background more included in the legal system, is why I have the support as well of that community. So there's always, when I go to events and things, there's a lot of younger women who come up to me and say they've been following my journey, and they're really glad that there's someone like me leading organizations, because then they feel that they can also do that. We have a saying here: you can't be what you can't see. And I think a lot of the younger generation of lawyers feel that when they see me, working at that level and representing their voice as well.
Absolutely. I think that's such a great saying that what you can't see, you can't be, and you being in these positions, in multiple positions, must have had some amount of impact. Like you said, you've had young girls come and tell you that, it's great that you're here because now they can dream of being here. What sort of impact do you think, let's say you being the president elect, or you heading so many other bodies, has had on diversity and representation, especially in the legal profession?
I think, as I said, it's really important that we are visible as people of color. We are visible, and I think me leading those organizations has created that visibility for a lot of people like me. So they feel that they're welcome in a place like that because there's someone like them leading that and who will potentially be looking after their interest and thinking about them. So I think that has been a big change, but also a lot of the advocacy work that I do includes changes in policy, has led to change in policy. So for example, more recently in the last few years, I've been invited to roundtable consultations with the government on legislative changes, and
Mhm.
they want the views of a person of lawyers of diverse backgrounds, because firstly we are people of diverse background, but as lawyers we are more informed. So if we are on that table of decision makers, we will be able to inform policy as well, and legislative changes, or if new legislation is being drafted, we have a say in that, on how that will impact our communities. And I think the government is now willing to listen to that, and that has happened over time because of the work of people like myself. I won't say I'm the only one doing that work. There's a number of people here in Australia who are doing similar work, who are fighting for this representation for a long time and advocating for that. And I think that has led to some change. That there is a lot. There's a lot more consideration of that at all levels. But I still feel that some of it is lip service and some of it is real. So we've got to still keep doing the work, because we don't want it to be you know just lip service done to tick the right boxes to make it look like they're doing the right thing, but they're actually not doing the right thing. So that's sometimes constantly challenging whichever government it is, whatever body that is, whatever policymaker that is. We're constantly challenging those, so that we feel there's real representation in society. It should be reflective of the people that walk the streets. Every profession should be reflective of that.
So, even sports, you've been involved in sports at multi levels. How did you get involved? Was it for the same reasons?
Pretty much the same reasons, but there was another reason why, because when I moved to Australia, I saw the sporting culture around me. So everyone was running, walking, or cycling to work. There was organized sport around me. Everywhere there's fields, people are playing some sport, whatever they're passionate about. And I started running. So I used to do a little bit of running when I was in India, but when I moved to Australia, I started doing long distance running, and I joined a running group at work. And now I've done a number of half marathons. So it really, sport gave me strength of body and mind, and the confidence, the ability to make new friends, fit in with the Australian way of life. And I really think that sport benefits women, particularly, or people of color, but also women particularly from diverse backgrounds, because it helps them make friends, find the confidence and support. There's a whole community that you become part of. And even for women facing domestic abuse or family violence, they could lean on these groups that become part of their everyday life, to be able to survive as well. So there's a lot of benefits that women of diverse backgrounds have in participating in sport. And but there weren't that many women that were doing that. So when I looked around me, I could barely see any women of color participating in any sport.
Mm.
Uh, I mean, I do see a lot of Indians and other women of different backgrounds participating in social activities, but not sporting activities. So
Mm.
I I was thinking about how much it helped me and how it helps other women. So I started my own not-for-profit called Multicultural Women in Sport, to get women of diverse background engaged in sport. um, on the side, I was invited to become an ambassador for Australian rules football, which is one of the most widely played sport in Australia. And because I was doing this community work, they wanted community leaders to spread the word about the sport in their communities. So I became an ambassador for that. Then I became an ambassador for Cricket Australia. I became an ambassador for the Commonwealth Games, Jean Haley's Women's Health. and I was running my own organization, sort of started my organization somewhere on the way. And all this sort of culminated in what I've been doing now is to see more diversity and inclusion in sport. I'm also now focusing a lot on good governance in sport, because I think good governance in sport is really important. Also, not from just for the point of view of seeing, more diversity and inclusion, but for everything, for a sport to be run better, for to have more audiences, for it to reach out to have a larger participation base. We need to have good governance. Governance starts at the top, so it all starts at the top and trickles down to the bottom. It can be the other way as well, though. So I've been doing a lot of that work for these reasons.
So you were the founder of Multicultural Women in Sports. What sort of impact do you think it's had in representation of, women in sports or diversity in sports? Also, let me also add, what do you think are the challenges that specifically women of diverse backgrounds have faced in Australian sports industry? And how do you think your organization has worked towards addressing this?
So there is a number of barriers that women of diverse backgrounds face in participating in sport, and some are external and some are internal. So internal ones are the ones where we all come. A lot of us come from patriarchal backgrounds, where sport is not really a feminine thing to do. It's considered antisocial for a woman to be participating in sport. And if you are from a sort of higher socioeconomic background, you always focus on academics. And there's also that fear of getting hurt and not being able to do well in your studies. So all those things combined, uh, lead to a number of barriers for women to be able to participate. Being a homemaker and role of a woman in society. So those are that's specific barriers that women of diverse backgrounds face. But generally also barriers because there is additional, all women face of additional burden on them as at home, and then them looking after children and going through you know to childbirth and their and again progressing their careers and things. So there's a number of barriers that women face, but there's also external barriers that women face here, particularly because a lot of the sporting organizations are not necessarily friendly for women or welcoming of women of diverse backgrounds to let them. So for example, I've been advocating for women to be able to play with hijab or longer clothing, modest clothing, because that's not something that is people are used to here. There's uniforms that women have to wear, particular uniforms, and a lot of women from conservative backgrounds may not be, comfortable wearing those kind of
Correct.
that sportswear. And for example, I've also advocated for swimming lessons to be made private for women when they come in, and there's no men around, or put up curtains. And that was done by a particular council here. A local council did that because so that they could get more women into the to come and do the lessons. So there's these all these sort of barriers are there, external, internal, and we don't see many faces of diverse background there, whether they're on the field or off the field. That's another deterrent for women to be able to join sport, because they don't feel they're welcome in a place. Whether or not they are or not, maybe a different thing, but the perception also is that they're not welcome. So they don't necessarily, and the policies are such which feel like you don't make them feel welcome, because I'm part of a lot of sporting organizations and I've been trying to effect change through that as well. So there's a lot of work that has gone in. It's about changing formats and structure of the some of the community sport that's rolled out to the community so that women can participate. For example, having mom and the kids participate at the same time. So when the mothers bring in their kids to sort of practice for football, they can do some activity around it. There's also been programs, for example, lawn bowls is a really nice sport where you can take your little child there as well. They can sort of be around and you can play with with other moms. And I think conservative families feel more comfortable sending the women of the house to places where they feel they're not there won't be too many men around, or they're going to be amongst other women, and it's more of like a social activity as well. So trying to bring in combine social activity with sporting activities as well, encouraging women to participate in whatever they want to, give them a lot of options, make it cheaper as well for them, do it at times that suit them as well, and thinking about safety, about transport for new migrants, the transport, the getting to the sport, is all these things are really important. So how do we make it easier for them to be able to participate and give them as many options as possible? So that's what I've been working on through my organization.
Oh my God, that's absolutely fantastic because it's so important. I think, especially, as you mentioned, immigrants, you're in a new environment and you would possibly, want to mesh in more. But there is a lot of immigration to Australia. And
Yeah.
do you think the government's taken enough measures to ensure inclusivity?
I would say it's a work in progress.
Mhm.
When I came here, there was not at all, not much emphasis on that. It was just about whatever the government needed, the kind of people they needed for for migration purposes. For example, if you need someone more people to work at 7-Elevens, to drive cabs, to do the white collar jobs, that's blue collar jobs. It depends what the government wanted, where the shortage lay, and they accordingly kept changing policies to bring in those kind of people or with those kind of skills. Um, but now we've have a number of generations here of migrants, so all
Mhm.
their needs are going to be different. There is people who came here maybe 50, 60 years ago. Another lot came in 30 years ago, and some that have come in the last 10 years, and they're all different kinds of migrants.
Yeah.
So my in-laws came here as doctors, and they are and my husband was born here. So they came in a very different time when their skills were valued, when they required people from professional backgrounds. Then a number of people, when I came here, and some of my friends who were here from a little bit before, they came to study, to do professional degrees as well, so software or management and those kind of things. And then they took up jobs in their respective fields. Then came a wave where really Australia just wanted some workers. So there were people who came here just to do some kind of course like cooking or hairdressing and things, but they were basically included in the workforce, which was doing casual work and more kind of working, as I said, in driving cabs, or working in 7-Eleven service stations and all of that. So I think the needs of these different migrants are quite different, and I'm not sure the government, or the government of the day, whoever it is, whether the policymakers are across all of that, or they club all multicultural communities in one basket, and they try and create policies for same policies for everyone. Whereas we know
Get
even in our
policy.
own Indian community, there's so many different kinds of people coming from different religions or states or social status and all of that. So and as I said, the waves of migration were different as well. So their needs are going to be different, and which is probably not understood very well. We also don't see many people in leadership positions. So I'm not sure whether we're valued as migrants, valued as a diaspora. That is something that I've also been advocating for. We need to see more of us in leadership positions, because decisions about us are being made by people who don't necessarily understand us or our culture or our backgrounds or our experience. So we need to see more of us in those positions as well. And I feel that not enough is being done in that space either. Slowly, there is, of course, recent visit by our Prime Minister Albanese to India, and the deliberations that happened there, the discussions, and a lot of the outcomes of that indicate that that is possibly where we're going. We want to see more leadership from the diaspora, but it hasn't happened as much yet as we would see in somewhere like US or UK.
So, you're quite clear that, there's a lot more work that needs to be done. If I was to ask you specifically, because, you're an expert and you're in the legal profession, what sort of, what sort of advancement has happened in the legal profession, to involve diversity and inclusion? Have they made specific steps? Of course, this being said, there is a lot more to be done, but has any specific steps been taken?
There is steps that have been taken. So in terms of judicial appointments, there is a bit more consultation though, and there's a lot of representation that is being made by organization like the Asian Australian Lawyers Association that I lead, and other organizations like the African Lawyers Network, or say, for example, the Muslim Lawyers Network, and there's other organizations like that. And there's a lot more push for that to happen. So it is happening. We have seen a little bit of change in the makeup of the judiciary, but it is not still not at the top level. So if you go to the High Court of Australia, which is the highest court, there's no person of diverse background. If you go to the next level, which is the Supreme Courts of each state, there might be, maybe we can count them on our fingers, the number of diverse people of diverse backgrounds. At the magistrate court level, at the lower court level, there is a lot more activity that's happening. So it's slowly starting to happen. You see more partners of bigger firms that are lawyers. They are law firms are making an effort. So they, a lot of them now have diversity and inclusion committees, and they focus specifically on that, on hiring as well as making people who are people who are of diverse background feel included. And then how do they progress as well? For me, what is really important is the attrition rate. So if you look at the entry level for law, there is more Asians entering the profession than any other, community. There's a lot of Asians that enter the profession, but as you keep going higher, you lose a lot of them. So at the top, there's barely anyone. So what is happening? At what level is that happening? That at the top is not reflective of what the entry level is. So that needs to be understood as well. What is happening? What's going wrong at what point that it does not happen? The representation is not enough. So there is some, I guess, work being done in that area, but there's a lot more that still needs to be done, and quicker as well.
So you obviously took this initiative to sort of push for these changes, to become the face of, you know, the importance of multiculturalism. What more do you think the community, specifically the Indian community, can do to be seen more, at least within your line?
Uh, so I guess I think there is no shortage of talent or, hard work amongst our community. They're already doing a lot of that work, and we are quite model citizens if you think about it. A lot of us are, most of us are. We sort of come as migrants, and we're very grateful for the fact that we've been given what we have. Maybe I'm a little bit more belligerent than the others because I feel we are due a lot more than we do get at times. But there's others who are quite happy that they are living a better lifestyle, or a better life here generally. So I feel that their efforts are not directed towards things that I'm kind of directing my efforts towards. It would be great if they also recognize that what they will do in this regard will benefit the future generations. I think then that would make more of a difference, because a lot of us sort of sit back and we quite relaxed about the whole thing. We don't care enough about a representational aspect of the diaspora. We are happy with just, being able to live a better life, and have a big car, have a big house, and send our kids to good schools. So I don't think a lot of us are trying to make that difference. And if we don't try, we obviously won't get there. So I feel if we can try and amplify our voices through a collective, that would be really good. There's also, I feel sometimes there's a little bit of as Indians, everyone wants to be a leader. There's a lot of people who want to be leaders in the community as well. So there's a lot of breakaway groups. There's a lot of multiple groups that are doing similar work, but their efforts are not, they're not concerted efforts, or they're not combined efforts. They're just not doing it together. So I feel that
Correct.
if we really need to combine forces and work on similar issues, identify what our real issues are, and work towards them, and advocate for them. The more people who advocate for the same thing, more likely we'll get the result. But if you're not doing it together as a community, if we're sort of being dragged in different directions because of whatever reasons they are, then I think that makes it a little difficult for even the government to take us seriously, because they don't know which group is legitimate and which group is not. So that can sometimes also become a problem.
That's detrimental to the whole cause. But
Absolutely.
let me come to my final question to you. I'm most fascinated uh, by what you said, that sports became a way of you becoming a part of society in Australia. The India-Australia relationship in the last few years, we've all observed, has gone from strength to strength. There was a time when we were basing the relationship just on, let's say, curry and cricket, like they
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
But now, obviously, it's got so many different facets to it. Even sports is not limited to
Cricket.
cricket.
Yeah.
My question to you as an expert who's been involved in sports policies and advocacy, how has the sports relationship between India and Australia evolved over the years? And what opportunities do you think there are that India and Australia can really sort of bank on to strengthen their relationship?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting that you said our relationship was initially based on Curry Commonwealth cricket, and has been the sort of cornerstone of our friendship and foundation. I think you can still build on those things to take it to the next level. Cricket is always going to remain the most important thing, no matter how much we fight that or how much we say that we don't want it. It's always going to be, because I think India is a cricket crazy nation. For Australia, they're not as crazy about cricket as Indians are, but they still value cricket. So I think that is a good basis to start on. But I think since I've come to Australia, I've seen a lot of changes in sort of how India consumes sport now as well. So India is consuming a lot more sport than it used to before, and a variety of sport. And there's a focus now on health and well-being. And although it's still more at the in the higher socioeconomic people of higher socioeconomic background, but then you see this complete contrast of all these people coming from very modest backgrounds who are succeeding in sport. There are a lot of these female athletes who won medals in the last few years are all women who are from amazingly different they're from backgrounds that you wouldn't think someone from in the sports would excel in sport, but they've been able to. So I think the culture in India has also changed, and also it may be because of social media, it may be because of exposure to international sport, different sports, so it has changed. And because of that, I feel that India is also in the relationship in sport for Australia and India is also changing and evolving. There's sports technology, for example, there's a lot of inflow of that happening in Australia. So India is pretty good at sports technology, some of sports technology kind of initiatives, and they're trying to sell that to Australia, and have been successful. Some of the companies have been successful. There are organizations like the Australian Sports Technology Network that I'm consulting with. They have done a number of conferences in India. They've been able to do pitches and tech, competitions, and there's a number of Indian organizations that have won that. So there is, the tech aspect is there. Women in sport is a really important one. I feel, especially now with the women's IPL, I feel that will, that is still cricket, but I think the impact that it will have on women's in sport in India is going to be phenomenal, and across the world as well, because in Australia, across the globe of cricket playing countries, we're hearing this narrative now about how how much those teams went for, and how it's going to change the landscape for women's sport in the world. So I think that is going to have an impact also, and I think that will also spearhead some of the other work that's happening in sport, women's sport in India, and that then can lead to further collaboration. I've had a number of this. I've recently launched another initiative called the Australia India Women in Sport Connect, to connect women of sport of both the countries together. So that is hopefully will bring more women of sport, and there'll be more collaborations. For example, women in sports governance, women in sports media, women in sports technology, and women, female athletes as well. So there's so much that can be done now. There's so much opportunity that exists between the two countries. Not just I'm talking about women in sport because that's my passion, but I think overall there is, because there's Indian players, there's Australian players who come and play for the Indian Super League in football. There's
Yeah.
coaches, there's umpires, there's all this movement already happening. It may not be visible too much, but when I talk to people both here and there, there's always opportunities that they talk about. I'm part of a big group that is a sports business group, and every day I hear of opportunities that are in India, and I hope that Australia is able to quickly jump on those and be able to capitalize on that relationship, the people to people links that sport can bring as well. Because I know that other countries, Australia, US and UK, are making massive investment in India in sport, and I think Australia needs to do that now. And it's really important because our diaspora is growing, and that'll be such a great thing to bring them together.
Well, Molina, thank you so much. It's been so great to have you on and get such an in-depth point of view on not just what you do, your work, legal profession, but also this very fascinating aspect to your interest in sports. And I'm sure the Australian and Indian government know exactly where to go to figure out how to move ahead. Thank you so much, and I'm sure our audience would have learned so much from you. And please do stay tuned in for other interviews that we do on this very critical relationship that we see developing in the Indo Pacific, that is the India Australia relationship. Thank you very much.